beekeeping safari today. I got my safari hat on and my safari weapon. Okay, you start.
All right, so we are here today because we are going to tell you some things that, you know, if we're at a party or church or something and people find out that we are running a beekeeping business, they often say like some similar things to us. And I thought we would ask Stan the questions that people ask and have him respond on video. So the first one is, how often do you get stung?
I get stung every day, or at least every day that I'm in the bees. Every time I go to the bees. There's occasional time when I don't, but it's usually lucky if I don't get stung every day.
Yep. Is it a big deal for you?
No, it's not a big deal anymore. You get used to it. It still stings. Every time you get stung, it still hurts the same, but it doesn't surprise you anymore.
Yep. Okay. The next question people ask us a lot is, how much honey do you get?
That depends, so can't give just a short answer. Sometimes I've tried giving a short answer to people. Average 40 pounds of honey per year per colony. So if I give that answer to somebody, they're like, oh, okay. So they're usually asking for a little more information than that. And so if I were to give you more information, it would be contingent upon the weather that year, the amount of rainfall, and the location where you put your bees. Is there a nectar source nearby where you put your bees? So there's lots of different variables that will determine how much honey you get.
And does the workforce numbers match when the nectar is available? There's a lot more. It's more than just what.
It's a complicated answer.
Weather and timing and all of that stuff.
Right. So I usually try to give an answer that's not just a short, terse, semi-rude answer. 40 pounds this year, but without getting in too depth. People they don't really want to know.
They don't want a dissertation.
They don't want a dissertation. They don't want a lecture. Well, some people might. They like to sit around and talk about bees, but usually not. So I'll give them an answer in between. So the short answer is, depends on the weather, how much rain we get. So let me say this at this point. So here's a good way to help people make a connection between how much honey you get. And it's pretty simple. I hope this won't sound condescending at all, but it's just a good lesson in beekeeping. So the amount of honey you get depends on the amount of rain. The amount of rain determines how much nectar the flowers have in them. The amount of nectar determines how much honey, because that's what the bees make honey out of. They gather nectar from the plant, they dry it out, they turn it into honey as they mix it with their enzymes. And so let's say it this way. If there's no rain, there's no flowers. No flowers, no nectar. No nectar, no honey. No honey, no bees. No bees, no pollination. No pollination, no crops, depending on the crop we're talking about.
The fruit crops.
Right. So there's a simple way to connect how much honey you get. Yeah.
What do bees do in the winter?
So bees will store honey for their winter food storage. They store honey for the winter time. And if they store more than they need for the winter time, then we beekeepers take a surplus. Then we leave the amount that they need for the winter. So they have a honey party inside the beehive all winter long. That's what they do.
Yep. Okay, this is something else that people say. I heard that bees are having trouble. Is that affecting your colonies?
It's affecting everybody in the industry for sure. We're making some good progress on lessening that impact it has on our colonies and our business. But yeah, it's still a worldwide problem with bee health, and there's a whole lot of reasons and variables that go into whether your bees are healthy or not, which is more than most people want to know. Just as a quick question on how are your bees? Small talk. How are your bees doing? Oh, okay. You know, we're not going to go into a complete lecture behind the importation of the varroa mite and the disease and the pesticides and the insecticides and the chemtrails.
And the lack of
and,
forages.
Yeah, and the cell phone towers and so we're still being affected though by all the environmental conditions out there that aren't the best for honeybees.
Yeah. Okay, another thing people talk to us about it when they find out that we're beekeepers is that they say that their wife or brother or cousin or uncle or grandma is allergic to honeybees. What does it mean to be allergic to honeybees?
Yeah. So if you're truly allergic to bees, your throat will, your respiratory system will start to shut down, right? You can't breathe. That's a true allergic reaction to bees. So if you get a localized swelling where the bee stung you, and it swells up quite a bit, that's not really an allergy to bees. That's just a local reaction to a bee sting and the venom in it.
Even like a grapefruit size swelling thing, it doesn't mean that you're allergic. I mean,
right.
It could, but it doesn't automatically mean that, right?
Right. And if you get stung in the mucous membrane, you get stung in the lip or something, or even around your eye, it'll swell up quite a bit, and it looks like you're really dying. But unless it's shutting your respiratory down, you're not gonna die from the bee sting.
I remember when we were dating and you got stung in the face and you didn't come to the dance last Saturday night, and I was so sad. But he was like, I got stung in the face. It looked like somebody beat me up.
Yeah, so be sure to put your veil on if you're beekeeping the day before an important event that you have to be at in the public. Yeah, you don't want to get stung in the face.
So, and then anaphylaxis is when your body reacts so severely to the bee venom, it's your immune system just flares up a ton and causes your throat to close and your body to shake and all the crazy things like that.
Yeah, so protect yourself if you truly are allergic or you think you might be. That's okay. Don't thinking you're being brave or tough or cool by going out to the beehive without your gloves and your bee veil on. Put your bee veil on.
Okay, so the next one is that people often tell us about a time when they had a huge clump of bees in their tree or garden or yard or on the eave of their house or something. They see a huge clump of bees and they're wondering about what that was.
Yeah, so there's a swarm of bees where all the bees will be hanging on each other in a cluster. They'll be typically on a branch on a tree, but it could be on a fence or some other structure. So that's a swarm of honeybees is moving from one place to another. All right, and then some people might refer to a swarm of bees as if they're just out foraging. If there's a tree or a bush in your yard that's blooming at the time, and there'll be a whole bunch of bees all over it, and you can just hear them buzzing. You could call that a swarm, but it's not typically a swarm that you want to call a beekeeper and say, hey, come and catch these bees and put them back in their box, because they're all over the place. Well, they're just foraging, and they'll go home back to their hive or wherever they came from at the end of the day.
What is it like when you need to call a beekeeper? Sorry, interrupted you.
So when they're hanging in a cluster, they'll be in a cluster on a branch. They'll all be hanging on one another and not foraging, not individual bees foraging on plants, right? They'll be all hanging on each other. That's when you call the beekeeper and tell them to come and put them back in the box.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And you do want to call the beekeeper and tell them to come and hive them. Don't think that you're doing anybody a favor, the bees particularly, by letting them fly and be free and go set up a nest in somebody's chimney somewhere, right? So there's an 80% chance that they're going to die the first year after they leave their home and go try to find a new one. So 20% of the time it works out okay and they survive, they find a good spot, they're undisturbed, they're protected, they have enough room to survive in there. But usually they're going to die. So if you see a swarm hanging somewhere, by all means call the beekeeper and tell them to come and get them.
Yep, then they'll have a much higher chance of survival.
Right.
If they're in a hive. Okay, so another question we get a lot is about wasps, really, but they say that bees are bothering them at their summer picnics. Do you want to comment about that?
Yeah, usually if something shows up at your picnic like ants, then it's usually wasps. So you got to know the difference between wasps and bees. Typically wasps or yellow jackets or hornets, they're yellow and black. They're yellow striped, right? So when somebody says those yellow honeybees, I don't know of any yellow honeybees. The original purebred Italian honeybee is a lighter color, and some of those look kind of yellow, yes, but usually their honeybee is more of an orange.
Or gold.
Or a gold color. They're not really yellow. If it's that really contrast that between black and yellow, it's usually a hornet, or a yellow jacket, right? So they're the ones that typically show up at your picnic. So sometimes bees will show up for something sweet, but usually it's yellow jackets.
And then hornets have smooth, or wasps is like the general category of all of these things we're talking about.
Right.
But they usually have a smooth body,
Yeah.
and bees are hairy. Like
Yeah.
native bees or honeybees, they're
Yeah.
hairy, so that's another way.
Right. And, or if you can see their wings, if you can get a close enough look at them, bees have 4 wings, right? 2 on each side. Wasps have 2 wings, 1 on each side.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so another thing people tell is their beekeeping experience. Like a lot of times people tell us that their grandfather kept bees, or some kind of family relation that does. What do you want to say about that?
So my grandfather kept bees. That's probably why I'm a beekeeper, and that's what interests a lot of people in it. But if you think about it, a long time ago, if your grandfather or your great-grandfather, depending on how old you are, they probably lived on a farm, and even if they didn't, they probably had a garden, fairly good-sized garden, and so part of the garden and the chickens and was honeybees. They had their own fruit trees. They grew a lot of their own food, and so most people kept bees at one time or another. They had some relative that did, but so anyway, that's a good enough reason to continue on your family tradition. I would keep bees if I were you. If having a grandparent or a relative that had bees is a good enough reason for you to be interested in it, then great. You should try taking up beekeeping. You won't regret it. It'll be it's a fun hobby, fun pastime.
What do you say to beekeepers that tell you that their hives died? That's another one we get.
Yeah. Well, so that's a problem with the entire industry. I would say, I'm sorry, you're not alone. If it makes you feel any better, my bees died too. So don't let it discourage you. They did some study on beekeepers. If they try for 3 years and their bees don't make it 3 years in a row, then they give up. Mm-hmm. So some part of the reasons why people keep bees though is that they want to do their part to help save the bees, which is good enough reason to take up beekeeping. So if they die, okay. It's not really that expensive of a hobby once you've made the initial investment in your equipment.
Well, especially compared to our other hobbies.
Yeah,
Right?
especially the many other hobbies that people have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that expensive to replace your bees even if they did die. Right?
It's a couple $100.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that just so you'll buy more bees from me. We actually make more money, do a better business if your bees stay alive than if they die. So
because you get excited and you tell all your friends.
yeah, and then you want more bees. Instead of 1 hive, you want 2, or you want 4 or 5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we hope your bees stay alive. We make every effort we can to help you keep them alive. So and then there's always a chance too that you'll catch swarms. So if your bees died, don't get rid of your equipment. Hang on to it, because your neighbor's going to know that you are a beekeeper, and they're going to call you up, or you'll be going someplace and you'll see a swarm of bees hanging on a tree limb somewhere. You catch them and put them back in your empty box, and you're off and running again.
Yep. Or in our case, swarms just move into our boxes.
Yeah, sometimes they just move in. So put your swarm outside where the bees can have access to it. They might just move into that empty colony.
Mm-hmm. It seems like when we first meet people and they're interested about, they're asking questions at a party or a church or something, they're asking, these are the things that they say, and those are our kind of standard responses. And now you can see why beekeepers have like people joke about beekeepers like talking about bees like during a whole like social event. They'll just talk about their bee colonies the whole time. Yeah. Now you can see why we get excited about talking about bees and the things they pollinate, and anyway, it's something that we love and have a lot of passion for, especially Stan.
Beekeepers like to talk about bees. You get 2 beekeepers together, and the conversation is going to roll around eventually to honeybees. That's all they're going to want to talk about.
Yep.
And they are fun to talk about. And there's so many different things to talk about that the conversation could go on and on and on and on forever.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an industry where you could be learning about bees your entire life and still not know everything there is to know about bees.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah.
Okay, any closing remarks?
Keep your bees. Let me say keep your bees. Thanks. Bye.